Senator, I'm wondering, you've kind of hyped up your national security bona fides in recent weeks and months. I'm curious if you think that you're more qualified than someone like Marco Rubio, who's been on Senate Intelligence, Senate Foreign Relations, if you're the real national security candidate in 2016.
Well, I think, look, experience is important, and anybody that has some knowledge, understanding, has got themselves in these issues, has something to bring to the table. I'm not going to comment on anybody else's national security experience. They can go out and make their own case. I think if you look at the long track record I've had, and both on the Armed Services Committee for 8 years as a subcommittee chairman, and the work I did in the Senate on national security and on foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East, particularly as it relates to radical Islam, and the fact that after I left the United States Senate, I spent close to 4 years in a think tank, and that's what I did. I wrote on national security and radical Islam and what I call the Gaylord of the 21st century. So this was not something, people always say, oh, well, Santorum, all he cared about is, war and cultural issues. My farewell address to the Senate was on national security. When I left the United States Senate, I didn't join a think tank to work on cultural issues. I worked on national security issues. So I think we have a pretty clear record of someone who's been leading on this. It's not a matter of just sitting on a committee, although that's important to get that insight. But what kind of leadership role have you provided at a very critical time?
Senator, is gay marriage diminished as an issue in the Republican primary?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say it's abortion diminished as an issue if it wasn't. In fact, I understand most Republicans, folks who are thinking of running, have the same position on the issue. Probably is less of an issue to differentiate.
A question about reaching out to the people, as you just did now. ACU President Matt Schlapp made some interesting comments this week saying that he wants to change CPAC because he sees a crisis in the conservative movement. Meaning, so many candidates, so many different candidates, no unity. Big politicians standing on big stages, giving big speeches, and when a teleprompter goes back, you leave, and in the process you forget about people here.
You're talking.
Do you share that opinion? Do you think it's good to change that?
You're talking to a guy that did 381 town hall meetings in Iowa. So,
and that's what you're doing here.
And I really believe that you get a better sense of who the person is when they're unscripted and have an opportunity to really test them. And that's what I did back in 2012, and I found it to be a very probably the thing that honed me as a candidate more than anything else. One of the reasons I think we ended up doing as well is because when you have to go out there day after day after day and deal with these issues, you get a much better sense of not just what the public wants to hear, but more importantly, what you really think. And it's important.
Senator, a question on the overlap between foreign policy and cultural issues. Do you think it's appropriate for the State Department to be defending the rights of homosexuals in countries where their lives are threatened?
I think we have to defend human rights anyway. If someone's life is threatened because of their race, sexual orientation, or other, I think we have an obligation to stand up and defend that human right. So I don't have a problem at all if people's lives are in jeopardy. Then we have an obligation to protect all people in their freedom.
Senator, you lost some core supporters in Iowa already. Obviously, this might be a deeper field than it was in 2012. If you choose to run, how are you going to differentiate yourself from those who also appeal to the conservative base?
I think you can see that. I mean, if anybody that is out there giving the speeches that I'm giving, talking about the economic plan that's going to transform the party, you don't hear anybody out there talking about immigration like I am. You don't hear anybody talking. I'll probably be the only person, if we end up running, who will be for a minimum wage increase. So I think on the economic issues, we'll differentiate ourselves, and on national security, I think we clearly can differentiate ourselves. So I think that isn't going to be a problem for me. It may be a problem for other folks, but I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem for me.
Are you surprised to see some of your poll numbers where they are given where you finished last time around?
Look, I don't. Poll numbers are a reflection of what people are hearing, and I think we saw this in the last campaign. Anytime someone got the media's attention tuned on them, they zoomed to the top of the polls. And so the question is, in 2012, the question was, when you're up there, how do you do? And as we saw in 2012, a lot of people got up there and accepted very well. So I don't really worry too much about what polls say now or even 6 months from now. I think we're going to make a decision based upon whether we think we have the necessary support, both financially and from the grassroots, and whether we think the message is one that is resonating with. We know. I mean, obviously, I believe the message is one that will unite this country and strengthen our country. The question is whether it's a message that can win a Republican primary, and we're going through that process like everybody else, trying to figure that out.
Would you rather have the media attention on other people, given what happened last time?
You know what? I always say when it comes to media, careful what you wish for. So I don't either wish for or against media attention.
Okay, guys, last question.
Another foreign policy question. Do you think that Middle Eastern terrorism, Islamic terrorism, is a greater threat to the United States than the Soviet Union was during the Cold War?
I think it's a different threat. It's a threat that is in some respects more difficult to understand and to respond to. The Soviet Union was in many respects a predictable animal. We had policies like mutual assured destruction. And we did it because we knew how they would behave, how they would act. And in fact, they were very predictable. And that doesn't mean they weren't evil. That doesn't mean they weren't oppressive. That doesn't mean they weren't everything that Reagan and others said about them. But the complexity of dealing with radical Islam and the fact that there are 1.5 billion Muslims around the world makes this a much more difficult issue and one that, if you look historically, was a more intransigent problem for the West than the 50 years of the Cold War.
Thank you.
1,000 years of the other one.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. We take your picture right here.